What's in a question? Maybe just about everything important. A smart and sharp question should strike up the most engaging of conversations. So let's have ourselves a little discussion here. Today, Diane joins us in the studio to discuss a highly debated law which has not yet been legalized in South Korea. So, good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning, Juwon. Welcome to the team. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's kind of like riding a bicycle.
Getting used to it?
Getting used to it.
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Has it been a long time since you went into the studio?
So last time I was in this booth broadcasting live for Arirang Radio, it was back in 2009.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like a decade ago.
That was probably when you were like in high school?
Yes. I was studying very hard in my high school days.
Yes. Well,
Right.
Diane, thank you for such a warm welcome,
welcome
to the
back.
team. Okay, so let's give out the question to our listeners one more time.
All right, so question, what does it mean to die with dignity? Just 4 years ago, South Korea passed the Life-Sustaining Treatment Determination Act, known as the Death with Dignity Law. It was a breakthrough, and more than 1 million Koreans have since signed documents telling their families how they feel about life-sustaining treatments and when to cut them off.
Okay, so it's a kind of a related law that we're going to talk about. It's
Yes.
not the same thing.
Right.
We're going to be talking about physician-assisted suicide. So the one that you were talking about, the Life-Sustaining Treatment Determination Act, that's when you're kind of terminally ill, you're kind of at the end of your road, and
Right.
you sign a waiver that says, I don't want resuscitation, I don't
Right.
want to be hooked up to a machine,
Right,
that kind of a thing.
you sign a DNR.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you feel when it comes to signing the DNR paper?
So I had a personal experience with this. I took care of my grandparents when my grandfather was at the end of his life. And he was really adamant that he did not want to be sustained with machines.
Right, right.
So he said, if my natural body is failing, just let me go. So we signed the DNR for him as the legal guardian.
Right.
And I think it's an individual's choice, also the family's choice.
Of course.
Yeah, but towards the end, I think you got to kind of my opinion is you got to kind of let nature take its course.
Right. So you're willing to sign a DNR for yourself?
Yeah, I'm all for it, for the DNR. It's kind of a tangential thing too, but you know, on the driver's license, you have the donor
Right.
thing. So I'm also a donor.
You're an organ donor. Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. But I also tell my wife that if I'm ever in a coma, like a coma, I say, give me 3 years.
3.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
why 3 years?
I just feel like if I'm in a coma, but I'm in one of those comas where I am conscious inside
right.
but can't move outside
Right.
kind of thing, I think 3 years is enough time for me to try to fight it and get myself
okay.
awake.
Right, right.
And then after 3 years, I said, okay, you can move on.
Okay. What does your wife say?
She just laughed.
Oh, she just laughed. Okay.
No comment.
Right. So PAS, physician-assisted suicide, has not yet been legalized. So right now, the Life-Sustaining Treatment Determination Act is legalized, but it's still illegal for even the sickest Koreans to take their own life, even if there's no possibility of recovery and death is imminent. To explain about assisted suicide or physician-assisted suicide, now the word is a bit scarier because of the connotation that the word suicide holds. So some call it assisted dying. Once it is determined that the person's situation qualifies under the physician-assisted suicide laws for that place, the physician's assistance is usually limited to writing a prescription for a lethal dose of drugs.
Okay. And I've seen movies about this. There are certain countries, especially in Europe, that
Right.
actually allow this, but in a lot of the world, it is illegal.
Right. I think you're talking about Before Me. Is it Before Me, the movie?
Oh, right,
Me?
right, that's right.
That
Yeah.
was about physician-assisted suicide. But in many jurisdictions, helping a person die by suicide is a crime. People who support legalizing physician-assisted suicide want the people who assist in a voluntary death to be exempt from criminal prosecution for manslaughter or similar crimes. Physician-assisted suicide, or PAS, I'll call it PAS from now, is legal in some countries under certain circumstances, including Austria, Belgium, Canada, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Spain, Switzerland, parts of the U.S., and parts of Australia. And the constitutional courts of Colombia, Germany, and Italy legalized assisted suicide, but their governments have not legislated or regulated the practice yet. But just a month ago, Italy carried out its first assisted suicide.
I see.
Right.
And so some common denominators to speak of. How do people usually qualify for PAS in these countries where it's allowed?
Right. So in most of those states or countries, to qualify for legal assistance, individuals who seek a physician-assisted suicide must meet certain criteria, including having terminal illness, providing they are of sound mind, voluntarily and repeated expressing their wish to die, and taking the specified lethal dose by their own hand. The laws vary in scope from place to place. In the U.S., PAS is limited to those who have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. But in Canada, anyone with a disability qualifies to die by PAS. In other countries such as Germany, Canada, Switzerland, Spain, Austria, Belgium, and the Netherlands, a terminal diagnosis is not a requirement, and voluntary euthanasia is additionally allowed. And Italy had the same case because its first assisted suicide was done by a man who was 44 years old and who was paralyzed top to bottom because of the car accident 12 years ago. And because even though he didn't have like terminally ill diseases, he chose to take his own life.
I see.
Right.
I was actually very surprised to see this poll result coming out of Korea. So give us the numbers.
Right. I was really surprised myself as well because of the high number.
Yeah.
Recent studies show that the vast majority of South Koreans are supporting legalizing this law. According to a poll result conducted by the Korea Research, 8 out of 10 Koreans are in favor of the so-called assisted death with dignity legislation, which allows doctors to end people's life on their own by giving drugs to terminally ill patients who are experiencing extreme pain. 1,000 men and women over the age of 18 were asked the question, what do you think about the legalization of the death of assistants? 82% of them said, I support. By age, the percentage in favor of those over the age of 60 was the highest at 86%, and those in their 30s disagreed the most at 26%, which was higher than that of any other age groups.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, makes sense. The older the people are, they are, I guess, more supportive of this idea.
Right. I mean, it becomes as a realization of like as they get older, they see the end of their lives and they kind of realize like, what do I want to do with my life in the end, right?
Right. And then the younger people, even though the majority of them still agree with this law, there's a higher percentage of dissension in the younger generation.
Exactly.
Give us some of the reasons, because usually the surveys, it's not just the I support, I don't support. There's boxes that you could check for reasoning of your support and reasoning of your dissension, right?
Right. Reason for agreeing in the poll were guarantee the right to self-determination, with 25% of the respondents giving that answer, followed by 23% with saying the right to a dignified death, and 20% with because they do not want to be a burden to their family or see their families suffer. On the other hand, the reasons for opposing the legislation were respect for life with 34%, risk of abuse with 27%, and violation of self-determination with 15%. For the last one, violation of self-determination, maybe this is a concern for risk of abuse for those people who cannot speak for themselves, and families and other related members will have to make the decision for the patient, and that might be a violation of self-determination. And other general reasons reasons for supporting PAS include respect for patient autonomy, equal treatment of terminally ill patients on and off life support, compassion, personal liberty, transparency, and ethics of responsibility. When death is imminent, patients can choose to have assisted death as a medical option to shorten what the person perceives to be an unbearable dying process. Pain is mostly not reported as the primary motivation for seeking PAS in the U.S. The three most frequently mentioned end-of-life concerns reported by Oregon residents who took advantage of the Death with Dignity Act in 2015 were decreasing ability to participate in activities that made life enjoyable, loss of autonomy, and loss of dignity.
And this I think it's very interesting in Korea. It kind of tells a little bit about the Korean culture. The top three reasons for support was, it's basically choice, guaranteed to self-determination, right? And then dignified death was the second one. But the third one, with 20%, was not wanting to burden their family or family members.
Which I thought was very Korean thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of very sacrificial.
Right.
Even till the very end.
Yes.
This survey is in line with another survey done by the government last year, right?
Right. In the Ministry of Health and Welfare survey last year of about 10,000 people over the age of 65, 85.6% said they were against the idea of life-sustaining treatment. And 90.5% agreed that it was important to die without physical and mental pain.
Okay. But taking survey and getting the results from everyday people is important, but the people that have to execute this plan, the frontline medical workers, the doctors, what are their opinions?
So many of the doctors, including the Korean Medical Association, who actually led the enactment of the dignity death law in February 2008, actually they oppose to this new law. They claim it has only been 4 years since the Act of Life-Sustaining Medical Care was enacted, and there are many things to supplement the current law. At that time, it took 20 years to make the law very strict, but the priority is to fix it now rather than adding another law when it comes to ending one's life. And the Medical Association putting it out in the statement of opinion, suspension of life-sustaining treatment means cessation of meaningless medical activities, but death with dignity for assistance is an act of terminating life. So it's a two different story when it comes to ending one's life. So there is a risk that the trend of neglecting life could be widespread when this new law is enacted. And the Korea Society of Hospice also objected in a statement saying dignity care should come first, and it will cause a trend of neglecting life if the new law is enacted. So it's in line with the Medical Association. And some doctors also remind that PAS is contrary to the Hippocratic Oath, which is the oath historically taken by the physicians. It states, "I will not give a lethal drug to anyone if I am asked, nor I will advise such a plan." The original oath, however, has been modified many times, and contrary to popular belief, it's not required by most modern medical schools, nor confers any legal obligations on individuals who choose to take it. There are also procedures forbidden by the Hippocratic Oath, which are in common practice today, such as abortion and execution. So some doctors argue that Hippocratic Oath goes against this law, but in reality, it's actually not.
Right. And moving on to religious perspectives, I'm sure there are religious groups that are very much against this as well.
Of course, because the religious groups are more a bit of conservative when it comes to life and death.
Very pro-life as well, right?
Right. The Roman Catholic Church acknowledges the fact that moral decisions regarding a person's life must be made according to one's conscience and faith. Catholic tradition has said that one's concern for suffering of another is not a sufficient reason to decide whether it is appropriate to act upon voluntary euthanasia. According to the Catholicism of the Catholic Church, God is the creator and author of all life. In this belief system, God created human life. Therefore, God is the judge of when to end life. So from the Roman Catholic Church's perspective, deliberately ending one's life or the life of another is morally wrong and defies the Catholic doctrine.
Okay, well, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Right.
How would you have responded to the survey?
I would have just said, yes, I support, because I do believe that I think I'm one of the very Korean who would say, I don't want to sustain my life when I get ill or when I'm under those machines, because I don't want to be a burden to my family. So I would definitely say yes.
Right.
Right.
It's definitely a sensitive issue, and I think there are equally justified perspectives
Of
on
course.
both sides.
Right.
But when you look at the details in the article too, the I guess qualifications for you to be a participant, or I guess a qualified individual for
Right.
PSA
Right.
is pretty stringent.
Right. Of course, and it should be.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. So it's not just like, okay, you know what, I don't, definitely the worries of it getting abused
Right.
by people, or people making rash and emotional decisions. Like, there would be safeguards in place
Right.
to prevent such decisions from
Right.
happening.
I mean, that's why the first law, it took 20 years to make it into in effect. So therefore, this new law might need a longer time than that one.
Right, but
Right.
it's still very surprising though that 80%
Right.
of the people who were surveyed said that they are in favor
Right.
of this law.
Right.
Diane, thank you for such an interesting topic.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.